Okay, so we've been talking about rest, and all of this sounds really great in theory, but what does this really look like on a day-to-day basis for folks who really appreciate what you're saying and try to enact that? If someone looks at their calendar, perhaps even just the movements of a day, what does it look like in the life of someone who really is trying to do this well?
Hmm. Yeah, so I don't think I can answer that question without referencing one of my favorite, somewhat recent Sabbath rest guides, and that is the Nap Bishop, Tricia Hersey, who, if you Google the Nap Ministry, you'll find her. And Tricia Hersey is this womanist, powerful Black woman who embraces rest as an act of resistance. And if you go to the website, you'll see she names it as an act of resistance against white supremacy and capitalism. So here's a starting point, which I realize I'm going straight back to the theory on this, but we'll get to the practice. The starting point is to recognize what are all the assumptions that lead us to put rest into an unattainable category. Why do we do that? That isn't, there's nothing, as far as I know, within, say, evolutionary biology that would say that's a good idea. All of the sleep science says it's a bad idea to marginalize rest across a long period of time. And so what are the assumptions that are provoking us to perceive rest as a luxury that we can just sort of like skirt under the rug? And then if we're willing to do that, and if we're willing to embrace that there are things that the act of stopping and resting can effectively resist, then I think we're in a better space. And part of this is, again, I just keep going back to the theory, and part of that's because it's hard. I think we have to ask, what do we want for our young people? Do we want them to continue ignoring their own needs for rest? Do we want them to continue unsustainable rhythms of life, unsustainable levels of activity, misplaced identities? And this is where it gets real, and it comes back to some of the other conversations. But if we're not willing to own that for ourselves and to receive that gift for ourselves, then why would our young people follow suit? But there is, I think, within that, at least one seed of what it could look like, or what I think it maybe should look like on a day-to-day basis. And that is, we have to separate our notion of Sabbath practice from an individualist consumerist mentality, which is to say, it's just about me and this thing I'm going to pull off the shelf, and I'm going to ingest it for a bit, and then I'm good. Nothing within the theological tradition, nothing within scripture gives us an image of Sabbath rest as something that an individual does in isolation in some vacuum with God. It's always God giving Sabbath, not just to humankind, but to an entire community that is situated within ecology. It's not only for the humans, it's for the whole creation. We see that in the sabbatical years and in the Jubilee. So some practical outcomes of that could be: wake up, breathe slowly, go outside no matter the weather, and take 10 deep breaths, recognizing that you are not alone. There's air to fill your lungs. There's insects or birds or crickets or whatever is in your neighborhood, neighbors, and that the world probably rested last night. And by the world, I mean those crickets, those animals that, it's out there resting, and maybe we can too. Go back inside, have your breakfast, do your stuff. But let that awareness of accompaniment of company, companions, go with you, and then how do we invite young people into that so that they're not perceiving it as this individualist consumerist activity, but that it is something that they would, of course you can't do it on your own. The forces against it are too strong. How do you build communities that can work at this together? Um, um, one last idea that I think I mentioned in one of the previous sessions, but this youth pastor I knew who decided to build her whole youth ministry around rest. And so every youth retreat had mandatory nap time on Saturday afternoon. And it took a couple years for it to catch on, but eventually it became the reason young people went on the retreats. Why can't we do that? Do we serve a God who rests or not? Do we serve a God who gives rest or not? Can we embrace rest as integral to who we are? And it's enormously difficult. But the possibilities for the kind of community and the kind of attention that can grow through that, I think, are extraordinary.
Well, and it's very countercultural, and I think it has been for a long time. And you spoke to that in your lecture too, about how much manna are we supposed to gather? How much can we do? And God gives this gift to a group of people who are starving for it, but who didn't even know that they were starving for it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Thanks.